Glass shattered against the imported Italian marble, the sound echoing like a gunshot through New York's most exclusive dining room. Patrons worth billions scrambled under tables as Leo Calloway, the heir to a global shipping empire, unleashed a hurricane of rage upon the establishment. He tore down velvet curtains and overturned tables, screaming at a ghost no one else could see. Security froze, terrified of his father's lawyers. But in the center of the chaos, one waitress didn't run. She didn't call the police. She simply walked through the debris, picked up a linen napkin, and did the one thing that would change history for the Calloway family forever. This is the story of how a single, silent act of kindness brought a billionaire to his knees. The air inside L'Éclat, Manhattan's reservation-only sanctuary for the ultra-wealthy, usually smelled of truffle oil, aged cognac, and old money. Tonight, however, it smelled of fear. Located on the 44th floor of a skyscraper overlooking Central Park, the restaurant was the kind of place where a bottle of wine cost more than a Honda Civic. Mary Bennett, a 23-year-old waitress with tired eyes and fraying shoelaces, balanced a silver tray loaded with escargots de Bourgogne. She was invisible here. To the oil tycoons and tech moguls dining in the velvet booths, she was merely a pair of floating hands serving their whims. She preferred it that way. Invisibility was safe. Invisibility meant she could finish her shift, collect her tips, and pay for her mother's dialysis treatment without anyone asking questions about her past. The heavy oak doors at the entrance slammed open with a violence that made the crystal chandelier tremble. Silence swept across the room instantly. The pianist froze mid-chord. Leo Calloway stood in the archway. At 25, Leo was the crown prince of the Calloway Logistics Group, a company that moved half the world's cargo. He was devastatingly handsome, with a jawline that could cut glass and eyes the color of a stormy Atlantic Ocean. But tonight, he looked like a shipwreck. His tuxedo shirt was unbuttoned halfway, revealing a chest heaving with exertion. His hair was wild, and sweat slicked his forehead. He didn't look drunk. He looked haunted. "Where is he?" Leo's voice was a low growl that vibrated through the room. The maitre d', a nervous Frenchman named Claude, scuttled forward, his hands trembling. "Mr. Calloway, please. Your father is not—" "Don't lie to me!" Leo roared. He grabbed the nearest empty table, a heavy mahogany piece set for 4, and flipped it. Fine china, crystal stemware, and a vase of white orchids crashed to the floor in a cacophony of destruction. Screams erupted. A senator's wife in the corner booth ducked under the table, clutching her pearls. Security guards, usually so imposing, hesitated at the perimeter. They knew the rules. You do not touch a Calloway unless you want your life ruined by a fleet of attorneys. Mary stood frozen near the kitchen swinging doors, clutching her tray. She watched as Leo Calloway moved through the restaurant like a natural disaster. He wasn't just breaking things. He was dismantling the symbol of the world he hated. He swept a row of expensive wines off the bar, the red liquid pooling on the floor like blood. "He promised!" Leo screamed at the ceiling, his voice cracking with a pain so raw it felt intrusive to witness. "He said he'd be here." He picked up a heavy ice bucket and hurled it at the wall-length mirror behind the bar. The glass exploded outward, raining shards down onto the expensive carpet. "Sir, please," Claude begged, backing away. "The police are on their way." "Let them come!" Leo spun around, his eyes wild. He grabbed a steak knife from a vacant table. The room gasped. The security guards reached for their tasers, escalating the tension to a breaking point. But Leo didn't lunge at anyone. He gripped the knife so hard his knuckles turned white, his body shaking with tremors. He looked trapped, a cornered animal surrounded by enemies. In his blind fury, he swung his hand back and smashed it against the jagged remains of the broken mirror. Fresh blood sprayed across the white tablecloths. A deep gash opened across his palm, slicing through the lifeline. Leo dropped the knife, staring at his bleeding hand with a strange, detached fascination. The rage seemed to drain out of him, replaced by a sudden, dizzying drop in blood pressure. He swayed. The security guards moved in, sensing weakness. "Get him down! Tase him if you have to!" the head of security barked. "No." A soft voice cut through the tension. It wasn't loud, but it was firm. Mary Bennett stepped forward. She set her heavy tray down on a pristine table. She didn't look at the manager. She didn't look at the security guards. She kept her eyes locked on Leo. "Do not touch him," she said, walking into the kill zone, the circle of broken glass surrounding the billionaire's son. "Mary, get back here. You're fired if you take another step," Claude hissed from behind a pillar. She ignored him. The crunch of glass beneath her sensible black work shoes was the only sound in the room. She walked straight up to the man who could buy and sell her entire neighborhood. Leo blinked, his vision blurring. He saw a figure approaching, a girl in a black uniform with a messy bun and eyes that held no judgment, only a profound, weary understanding. He flinched, raising his uninjured arm as if to ward off a blow. "I'm not going to hurt you," Mary said. Her voice was steady, the kind of voice one uses to soothe a frightened horse. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a clean, white service cloth. She didn't ask for permission. She gently took his bleeding hand. Leo was taller than her by a foot, but in that moment, he looked small. He stared down at her, confused by the contact. No one touched him. They feared him, they used him, or they seduced him. They never just held him. "Look at me," Mary commanded softly, wrapping the cloth tightly around the gash to stem the flow. "Breathe, Leo. Just breathe." "My father," Leo stammered, his adrenaline crashing. He missed it. The anniversary. Her anniversary. "I know," Mary lied. She didn't know. She didn't know who she was, but she knew grief. She recognized the look in his eyes because she saw it in the mirror every morning. It was the look of someone who had been screaming for help in a soundproof room. The sirens wailed from the street below, getting louder. "They're going to arrest me," Leo whispered, the fight completely gone. He looked like a child who had broken a vase and was waiting for the punishment. Mary finished tying the makeshift bandage. She looked up at him, her dark eyes piercing his soul. "Then let's make sure you walk out of here with your head up." She took a bottle of sparkling water from a nearby table, uncapped it, and poured it into a clean glass. She placed it in his shaking hand. "Drink," she ordered. "Wash the taste of anger out of your mouth." Leo took the glass. He drank. For the first time in hours, the red haze in his vision cleared. He looked at the wreckage he had caused, then he looked at the waitress. He saw the name tag pinned to her vest. Mary. "Why?" he rasped. "Why are you helping me?" Before she could answer, the NYPD burst through the double doors, guns drawn. "On the ground, now!" Mary didn't step away. She placed a hand on Leo's shoulder, a silent signal to the police that he was subdued, that he was human. "It's okay," she whispered to him. "Just go with them. Don't fight." Leo Calloway, the man known for assaulting paparazzi and drag-racing Lamborghinis through Soho, dropped to his knees. He put his hands behind his head, his eyes never leaving Mary's face. As the officers cuffed him and dragged him away, leaving a trail of blood and water on the floor, the manager, Claude, stormed up to Mary. His face was purple with rage. "You idiot!" Claude screamed, spittle flying. "You endangered the guests. You violated protocol. Get your things. You are done at L'Eclat. You are done in this city." Mary watched the elevator doors close on Leo Calloway. She felt a strange pull in her chest, a terrifying sense that she had just stepped onto a train that was moving too fast to stop. She untied her apron, let it drop to the floor amidst the broken crystal, and looked Claude in the eye. "I was quitting anyway," she said, her voice shaking only slightly. The soup was cold. 3 days later, the headlines were vicious. "Billionaire brat destroys Leclat, claims daddy issues, the $2 million tantrum." Leo Calloway was released on a bail set so high it would have bankrupted a small country, paid instantly by the Calloway family lawyers. But Leo wasn't at the Calloway estate in the Hamptons, nor was he in his penthouse overlooking Central Park. He was sitting in the back of a blacked-out Cadillac Escalade parked across the street from a rundown apartment complex in Queens. "Sir," his driver, a massive ex-Marine named Gunner, said while watching the rear-view mirror. "We've been here for 2 hours. Your father is expecting you at the board meeting. He is displeased." Leo ignored him. He was staring at the front door of the building. It was a brick structure with peeling paint and a rusted fire escape. It was a world away from the marble floors of Leclat. He looked down at his hand. The stitches were neat, covered by a professional bandage now, but he could still feel the pressure of the linen napkin the waitress had tied. He could still feel the phantom warmth of her hand. In the holding cell, amidst the drunks and the thieves, Leo hadn't thought about his father's neglect. He hadn't thought about the anniversary of his mother's death, the reason he had snapped. He had thought about the girl, Mary. He had hired a private investigator the moment he made bail. It hadn't been hard to find her. Mary Bennett, 23, dropped out of art school 2 years ago. Mother, Sarah Bennett, suffering from stage 4 kidney failure. Father, deceased. Employment, terminated from Leclat for insubordination. Guilt, a feeling Leo rarely experienced, had been gnawing at his gut since he found out she was fired. She had saved him from being tased, perhaps even shot, and in return, he had cost her the livelihood she needed to keep her mother alive. "There she is," Leo whispered. Mary exited the building. She wasn't wearing the crisp uniform anymore. She wore a faded, oversized grey hoodie and leggings. She looked exhausted. She was carrying 3 heavy tote bags, likely laundry, heading toward the laundromat down the block. "Wait here," Leo said, opening the door. "Sir, this is a bad idea," Gunner warned. "The press is looking for you. If they see you in Queens—" Leo slammed the door shut. He pulled the hood of his cashmere sweater up and put on dark sunglasses. He followed her. He caught up to her just as one of the bags ripped. Dirty clothes spilled onto the dirty sidewalk. Mary let out a groan of frustration, dropping the other bags to her knees to gather the scattered socks and shirts. "Let me help," Leo said, crouching down. Mary stiffened. She recognized the voice. It was the voice that had screamed at the ceiling of Leclat. She looked up, her eyes widening as she saw him behind the sunglasses. She didn't scream. She didn't ask for a selfie. She didn't spit on him. She just sighed, snatched a t-shirt from his hand, and stood up. "You're the last person I need to see right now, Leo." She used his first name, not Mr. Calloway. Just Leo. "I heard you got fired," Leo said, standing up. He felt ridiculously out of place in his $600 sneakers on this cracked pavement. "News travels fast in the ivory tower," Mary said, shoving the clothes back into the torn bag. She began walking again, faster this time. "Go away. Unless you're here to smash up the laundromat too? I don't think they have insurance for billionaire rage." "I came to apologize," Leo said, matching her pace, "and to offer you a job." Mary stopped dead. She turned to face him. The wind whipped her hair across her face. "A job? What, as your keeper? Do I get a whistle and a treat bag for when you start breaking things?" Leo flinched. Her sharp tongue was a surprise. At the restaurant, she had been a calming angel. Here, she was a warrior defending her territory. "I deserve that," Leo admitted. "Look, my father. Victor Calloway. He owns more than just shipping lines. He owns the Aurora Grand Hotel. We need discreet staff. Staff who can handle pressure. Staff who don't sell stories to the tabloids." "I'm not interested in your world," Mary said, shifting the heavy bags. "Your world chewed me up and spat me out in less than 10 minutes. "I'll pay you triple what you made at L'Eclat," Leo said. Mary's eyes flickered. He saw the calculation happening. Triple salary meant better doctors for her mum. It meant getting off the waiting list for a transplant. It meant heat in the winter. "And," Leo added, stepping closer, removing his sunglasses to show the sincerity in his storm-grey eyes, "I will personally ensure no one treats you like furniture ever again." Mary studied him. She saw the bandage on his hand. She saw the desperation he was trying to hide. He wasn't offering her a job just because he felt guilty. He was lonely. He was surrounded by people paid to agree with him, and he was desperate for the one person who had been brave enough to tell him to breathe. "What's the catch?" she asked. "The catch is you have to work directly for me," Leo said. "My personal assistant recently resigned. I need someone to organize my life, manage my schedule, and yes, maybe stop me from throwing tables when my father forgets I exist." Mary looked at the laundry bags. Then she looked at the text message on her phone from the pharmacy. Prescription ready. Co-pay, $450. She didn't have the money. 5 times, Mary said. "Excuse me?" 5 times what I made at L'Eclat, Mary negotiated, her chin held high. "Full benefits, health insurance starting day 1. And if you ever raise your voice at me, I walk. And I sell the story to TMZ. Leo stared at her. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face, the first real smile he had worn in years. It transformed him from a brooding monster into something dangerously charming. "Deal," he said, extending his uninjured hand. Mary hesitated, then took it. His grip was warm. "One condition," she added. "Name it." "You carry the laundry." Leo Calloway, whose hands were insured for millions, laughed. He bent down, picked up the 3 heavy bags of dirty clothes, and threw them over his shoulder. "Lead the way, boss," he said. The Aurora Grand Hotel was not just a hotel. It was a fortress of limestone and gold leaf situated on 5th Avenue. It was the crown jewel of the Calloway estate, the place where Victor Calloway, the patriarch, held his court. Mary's first week as Leo's personal assistant was a baptism by fire. She expected glamour. She got chaos. Leo's life was a mess of missed appointments, ignored board documents, and pills, mostly anxiety medication and sleeping aids, scattered on his nightstand. She learned quickly that the public perception of Leo as a spoiled brat was a carefully constructed lie. It was a shield. If people thought he was crazy, they didn't expect him to be competent. And if he wasn't competent, he didn't have to become his father. On Tuesday morning of her second week, Mary was in Leo's penthouse office at the hotel, organizing a stack of contracts for a merger with a European shipping firm. The elevator chimed. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Victor Calloway walked in. He was a man carved from granite, 60 years old, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than Mary's entire education. He didn't walk, he marched. He was accompanied by 2 lawyers who looked like vultures in human skin. "Where is he?" Victor demanded, not even looking at Mary. To him, she was just another piece of furniture, easily replaced. "Leo is in a meeting with the architects for the new Dubai project," Mary lied smoothly. She knew exactly where Leo was. He was on the roof, having a panic attack because today was his mother's birthday. Victor stopped. He slowly turned his head to look at Mary. His eyes were cold, dead sharks. "You're the new girl." "The waitress." "I'm his executive assistant, Mr. Calloway," Mary corrected, standing up. She didn't tremble. She remembered Leo's hand shaking in the restaurant. This man was the cause of that shaking. "He hired a servant to run his life," Victor scoffed, walking over to Leo's desk and picking up a crystal paperweight. "Typical. Tell him the merger signing is moved to tonight. The gala." "Tonight?" Mary frowned. "The gala is a charity event. Leo isn't prepared to sign." "I don't care what he is prepared for," Victor snapped. He slammed the paperweight down. "He will be there. He will smile. He will sign the papers handing over the European division to the board's control. Or I will cut him off. Completely." Victor leaned over the desk, invading Mary's personal space. "And you? If you want to keep this little Cinderella job, you will make sure he complies. Do not think you are special, my dear. Leo collects strays. He eventually gets bored of them." Victor turned and left, his lawyers trailing behind him. Mary stood there, her heart pounding. She looked at the contracts on the desk. She read the fine print. Victor wasn't just asking Leo to sign a merger. The documents were structured to strip Leo of his voting rights in the company. It was a coup. Victor was trying to steal his son's birthright in front of the city's elite. She grabbed the files and ran for the service elevator. She had to get to the roof. She found Leo standing on the ledge of the penthouse terrace, looking out over the city. The wind whipped his coat around him. He wasn't going to jump. He wasn't suicidal, just desperate for air. But he looked precarious. "Leo!" Mary shouted over the wind. He turned. His face was pale. "He's here, isn't he? I saw the car." "He's planning an ambush," Mary said, walking up to him. She held up the files. "Tonight at the gala. These papers, they strip you of your voting power. He wants to humiliate you publicly and take your shares." Leo laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Let him. I don't want the company anyway. I just want to be free of him." "If you sign these, you won't be free," Mary argued, slamming the folder against the railing. "You'll be his dependent forever. He'll control your allowance, your home, your life. You have to fight back." "I can't!" Leo shouted, finally looking at her with tears in his eyes. "I can't beat him, Mary. He's Victor Calloway. He destroys everything he touches. He destroyed my mother." "He didn't destroy you," Mary said, stepping closer. She reached out and took his hand, the same hand she had bandaged. "Not yet." "Why do you care?" Leo whispered. "You're getting paid either way." "Because," Mary said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "I know what it's like to have a parent who is sick. My mother is sick physically. Your father, he's sick in the head. You don't abandon family, but you don't let them drown you." She pulled a pen from her pocket. "Don't sign his papers," she said. "We're going to write our own." "We?" "I read the bylaws last night," Mary said, a mischievous glint in her eye. "There's a clause. If the heir is married or settled with a partner of standing, the trust fund unlocks fully, independent of the patriarch's control. It was put in by your grandfather to prevent exactly this kind of takeover." Leo stared at her. "I'm not married." "No," Mary said, "but for tonight, for the gala, you could be settled." Leo looked at her. He really looked at her. The wind blew a strand of hair across her face. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was steel. "Are you suggesting we fake a relationship?" Leo asked, a slow grin forming. "I'm suggesting we go to that gala," Mary said, and we put on a performance that makes your restaurant tantrum look like a nursery rhyme. We make you untouchable." Leo stepped down from the ledge. He walked over to her, closing the distance until they were inches apart. The electricity between them crackled, sharper than the winter air. "You'd do that for me?" "I'd do that for the guy who carried my laundry," she smiled. "All right, Mary Bennett," Leo said, taking the folder from her and tossing it off the roof, watching the papers scatter into the wind over Fifth Avenue. "Let's go wreck a party." The dress arrived at Mary's tiny apartment in Queens at noon, delivered by a courier who looked like he guarded the president. It was a garment that defied gravity, a column of emerald green silk that shimmered like liquid money. There was no price tag, but Mary knew that a single thread of it cost more than her rent. Alongside the box was a velvet pouch containing a necklace. Diamonds. Real, heavy, terrifying diamonds. Mary stared at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror. The transformation was unsettling. The tired waitress with the frizzy bun was gone. In her place stood a woman who looked like she could start wars. She applied a bold red lip, her hand steady despite the hurricane in her stomach. She wasn't doing this for the clothes. She was doing this because, for the first time in her life, someone had looked at her and seen a partner, not a servant. A black limousine idled downstairs. The winter solstice gala was held in the grand ballroom of the plaza. It was the kind of event where the air conditioning was scented with jasmine and the champagne was older than the guests. The paparazzi line was 5 deep at the entrance, a wall of flashing lights and screaming voices. When the limousine pulled up, the crowd hushed. They were waiting for Leo Calloway, the Prince of Ruins, expecting him to stumble out drunk or angry. Instead, the door opened and Leo stepped out. He wore a midnight blue tuxedo, tailored to perfection. He looked sharp, sober, and dangerous. He reached a hand back into the car. Mary took it. As she stepped onto the red carpet, the flashbulbs erupted like a supernova. She squeezed Leo's hand, a signal. "Breathe." "Head up," Leo whispered, leaning in close, his breath warm against her ear. "You own the sidewalk. You own the building. You own them." They walked the gauntlet. Mary didn't shrink. She channeled every ounce of grit she had learned waiting tables for rude customers. She looked the cameras dead in the lens. Inside, the ballroom was a sea of black ties and designer gowns. The moment they entered, heads turned. Whispers rippled through the room like a contagion. "Is that Leo? Who is she? Is that the Calloway emerald on her neck?" Victor Calloway stood at the center of the room, holding court near the ice sculpture. He looked like a king surveying his subjects. When he saw Leo, his eyes narrowed. When he saw Mary and the necklace resting on her collarbone, his face went rigid. He excused himself from a senator and marched towards them. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. "Leo," Victor said, his voice a low, pleasant baritone that didn't match the malice in his eyes. "I didn't expect you to bring company. I thought we had business to discuss." "We do," Leo said. His voice was steady. He wrapped an arm around Mary's waist, pulling her flush against him. The heat of his body was grounding. "Father, I'd like you to formally meet Mary Bennett." Victor looked at Mary with the disdain one might show a cockroach on a wedding cake. "The waitress? Charming. I suppose she's here to take our coat check tips." Mary smiled. It was a sharp, razor-edged smile. "Actually, Mr. Calloway, I'm here to ensure Leo doesn't sign anything he'll regret. I manage his affairs now, all of them." Victor's jaw tightened. "This is a family event, Miss Bennett. Leo, the lawyers are in the library. The papers are ready. Sign over the European voting rights, and I'll make sure your allowance covers whatever fee this girl is charging you." Leo laughed. It was a genuine, confident sound that startled Victor. "I won't be signing, Father," Leo announced, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "In fact, I'm invoking Article 14 of the Callaway Trust." The color drained from Victor's face. Article 14 requires the beneficiary to be settled, committed. You are a playboy with a temper. "Not anymore," Leo said. He turned to Mary, his eyes softening. For a second, Mary forgot it was an act. He looked at her with such intensity that the rest of the room faded. "Mary and I are engaged." The gasp in the room was audible. A glass dropped somewhere in the distance. Victor looked at the necklace, the Callaway emerald. It was an heirloom that had belonged to Leo's mother. By law, it signified the matriarch of the family. "You gave her the necklace," Victor hissed, his composure cracking. "That belongs in the vault." "It belongs to my fiancé," Leo corrected. "And as per grandfather's will, a settled heir gains full control of his shares immediately. My lawyers filed the intent regarding our engagement this morning. The trust is unlocked. I have the majority vote now, Father. The European division stays with me." Victor looked like he had been slapped. He glared at Mary, a vein throbbing in his temple. "You have no idea what you've walked into, girl. You think this is a fairy tale? This is a war zone." "I'm from Queens, Mr. Callaway," Mary replied coolly. "We handle war zones just fine." The orchestra began a waltz. Leo ignored his father and bowed to Mary. "May I?" She nodded. He swept her onto the dance floor. As they spun, the world blurring into streaks of gold and light, Leo pulled her close. "You were incredible," he whispered. He looked like he was going to have a stroke. "We lied to half of New York," Mary whispered back, her heart hammering against her ribs. "You just told them we're engaged, Leo. That wasn't in the script." "It was the only way to lock the trust," Leo said. His hand tightened on her waist. "I'm sorry I sprang it on you, but seeing you in that dress, it didn't feel like a lie." Mary looked up at him. The blue of his eyes was electric. The line between the con and reality was blurring terrifyingly fast. She felt safe in his arms, cherished even. It was a dangerous drug. "We have to keep this up," she warned him, trying to keep her voice steady. "The press will dig. Your father will dig. If they find out it's fake, you lose everything." "Then we don't let them find out," Leo murmured, spinning her into a dip. He leaned down, his face inches from hers. "We make it real, for the cameras." He didn't kiss her. He held the moment, the tension thick enough to choke on, leaving every person in the room convinced that Leo Callaway was hopelessly, madly in love. From the shadows of the balcony, a pair of eyes watched them. Sloane Kensington, the daughter of a rival oil magnate and Leo's ex-girlfriend by social arrangement, gripped her champagne glass until the stem snapped. "Engaged," Sloane muttered to herself, watching blood drip from her finger onto the marble floor. "We'll see about that." The week following the gala was a blur of headlines. Prince and the Pauper. Callaway heir tamed by mystery fiancé. Mary moved into the penthouse. It was necessary for the ruse. The paparazzi were camped outside her apartment in Queens, and Leo insisted it wasn't safe. The penthouse was a palace of glass in the sky, cold and modern. But Mary brought life to it. She bought plants. She stocked the fridge with actual food instead of just protein shakes and vodka. She forced Leo to sit down for breakfast. But the fake engagement created a strange, suffocating tension. They slept in separate rooms, but the walls felt paper-thin. One rainy Tuesday night, Mary woke up to a crash. She grabbed a heavy brass lamp and ran into the hallway. She found Leo in the living room. He wasn't raging. He was on the floor, surrounded by scattered blueprints, shaking violently. Another panic attack. Mary dropped the lamp and knelt beside him. "Leo, Leo, look at me." "I can't do it," he gasped, clawing at his chest. "The board meeting tomorrow. Victor is going to challenge the engagement. He's going to demand proof. He knows I'm a fraud." "You are not a fraud," Mary said firmly. She took his hands, forcing him to stop scratching at his skin. "You are brilliant. I've seen your notes on the European expansion. You know the logistics better than anyone." "It's not the business," Leo choked out. "It's him. Every time I look at him, I feel like I'm 5 years old again, waiting for him to tell me I'm worthless." Mary didn't hesitate. She pulled him into her arms, rocking him gently. "He doesn't have power over you anymore. You have the shares. You have the control." "I don't have you," Leo whispered into her shoulder. "Not really. It's just a contract." Mary froze. The vulnerability in his voice broke her heart. She pulled back to look at him. His eyes were red-rimmed, stripped of all the billionaire arrogance. "It doesn't feel like a contract to me," she admitted softly. Leo searched her face. The rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Slowly, tentatively, he reached out and touched her cheek. "Mary, I don't want to pretend anymore." He kissed her. It wasn't a show for the cameras. It was desperate, hungry, and real. It tasted of rain and longing. Mary kissed him back, her fingers tangling in his hair, the months of unspoken tension finally snapping. For a few days they lived in a bubble. They were conspirators turned lovers, hiding from the world in their tower. But the world has a nasty habit of breaking in. On Friday, Mary returned to the penthouse after visiting her mother at the dialysis center. She felt lighter than she had in years. Leo had secretly paid the clinic for a year of advanced treatment. He hadn't told her. The nurse had mentioned it. She walked into the living room, bursting to thank him, to tell him she loved him. She stopped. Leo was sitting on the leather sofa. Opposite him sat Sloane Kensington. Sloane was beautiful in a predatory way, blonde, sharp, and wearing a suit that cost more than a house. On the coffee table between them lay a manila folder. The atmosphere was freezing. "Mary," Leo said. His voice was flat, dead. He didn't look at her. He was staring at a photograph on the table. "What's going on?" Mary asked, dropping her purse. Sloane smiled, a cruel, venomous curling of lips. "Hello, Mary. We were just discussing your extracurricular activities." "Leo." Mary stepped forward. Leo stood up. He held up the photograph. It was a grainy picture of Mary handing an envelope to a man in a dark alley. "Who is he?" Leo asked. His voice was shaking, not with fear this time, but with betrayal. That's my cousin, Danny," Mary stammered. "He was in trouble. He needed money for rent. I gave him some cash." "Cash?" Sloane laughed. She reached into the folder and pulled out a bank statement. "This shows a transfer of $50,000 from Leo's corporate account to an offshore account linked to Danny. And coincidentally, Danny works for Hargrave Logistics, our biggest competitor." Mary's blood ran cold. "What? No, I never touched your accounts, Leo. I don't even have the codes." "You have my tablet," Leo said, his eyes hard. "You have access to everything. Sloane's team traced the IP address. It came from this penthouse last night, while I was sleeping." "Leo, please," Mary begged, tears pricking her eyes. "This is a setup. Sloane is lying. She wants to break us up." "Why would I lie?" Sloane asked smoothly, standing up and brushing invisible dust off her skirt. "I'm just a concerned shareholder. I saw irregular activity. I investigated. It turns out your little waitress isn't just a gold digger, Leo. She's a corporate spy. She sold the European merger details to Hargrave." Leo looked at Mary. The trust that had built between them, fragile as spun glass, shattered. He was a man who had been used his entire life. His default setting was suspicion. "Did you do it?" Leo asked. "Did you sell me out?" "No!" Mary screamed. "Leo, look at me! You know me!" "I thought I did," Leo said quietly. He turned away from her, looking out the window at the grey city. "My father was right. Everyone has a price." "Leo, don't do this," Mary pleaded, stepping toward him. "Get out," Leo said. "Leo!" "Get out!" he roared, picking up a crystal tumbler and hurling it at the wall. It smashed, echoing the destruction of the restaurant the night they met. Sloane smirked. She walked over to Mary and whispered, "Back to the gutter, Cinderella. Don't worry, I'll take care of him." Mary looked at Leo's back. He wouldn't turn around. She knew that posture. He had shut down. He had built the walls back up, higher and thicker than before. She didn't beg. She didn't scream. She remembered her dignity. She took off the engagement ring, the heavy Callaway emerald. She placed it gently on the coffee table next to the fabricated evidence. "You're the smartest man I know, Leo," Mary said, her voice trembling. "But you're also the blindest." She turned and walked out of the penthouse, the elevator doors closing on the only happiness she had ever known. As she exited the building into the cold New York rain, 2 police officers stepped forward. "Mary Bennett?" one asked, holding up a badge. "You're under arrest for corporate espionage and grand larceny." Sloane hadn't just framed her to break them up. She had framed her to put her away. Mary let them cuff her wrists. She didn't fight. She looked up at the penthouse balcony, 40 stories up, hoping to see him. But the balcony was empty. The Prince of Ruins was alone again, and Mary was heading to a cell, stripped of everything but the truth that no one believed. The silence in the Callaway penthouse was louder than the screaming had been. For 3 days, Leo Callaway sat in the dark. He didn't drink. He didn't sleep. He sat on the leather sofa where he had accused Mary, staring at the empty spot on the coffee table where she had left the emerald ring. Victor Callaway had won. With Mary arrested, and the engagement proven to be a sham, or so the narrative went, the board had reverted control to Victor. The merger with the European division was back on schedule. Sloane Kensington was preening, practically moving into Leo's office, acting as the de facto queen of the empire. But something gnawed at Leo, a splinter in his mind. It was what Mary had said before she left. "You're the smartest man I know, Leo. But you're also the blindest." Leo stood up. His joints popped. He walked over to the trash can where he had thrown the manila folder Sloane had given him. He fished it out. He spread the documents on the table again. The bank transfer, the IP logs, the photos. It looked perfect. Too perfect. He looked at the timestamp on the digital transfer log, 3:42 a.m., Tuesday. Leo froze. At 3:42 a.m. on Tuesday, there had been a thunderstorm. A massive power surge had knocked out the building's main Wi-Fi for 40 minutes. He remembered because the smart blinds had reset and opened, waking him up. He had gone to the kitchen for water. He had seen Mary then. She was asleep on the couch, exhausted from organizing his files. Her laptop was closed. If the Wi-Fi was down, how was a secure, high-frequency trading transfer authorized from this IP address? It was impossible, unless the transfer hadn't come from the penthouse at all, unless the IP address had been spoofed to look like it came from here. Leo grabbed his phone. He dialed Gunnar, his driver and head of security. "Gunnar, I need the building's physical security logs from Tuesday night, specifically the server room in the basement." "On it, boss," Gunnar's voice rumbled. "And, sir?" "If I may," What? I drove Ms. Bennett to the police station. She didn't cry. She didn't ask for a lawyer. She just asked me to make sure you ate dinner. Those aren't the actions of a thief. Leo felt a knife twist in his gut. Get me the logs, Gunner. 10 minutes later, the email arrived. Leo scanned the entry logs for the server room. At 3:30 a.m., a maintenance keycard had been used. The card belonged to Hargrave Logistics, the very company Mary was accused of working for. But wait. Leo zoomed in on the security footage attachment. The figure entering the server room wasn't Mary. It was a man in a maintenance uniform. Leo recognized the watch on the man's wrist. It was a distinctive gold-plated chronograph. He had seen that watch before. On the wrist of Sloane Kensington's personal bodyguard. The realization hit Leo like a physical blow. Sloane hadn't just framed Mary. She had physically breached the Callaway building to do it. It was corporate sabotage, wire fraud, and conspiracy. And his father knew. Victor had to know. Sloane wouldn't dare pull a stunt like this without the Emperor's blessing. Leo felt the familiar rage rising, the heat that usually made him flip tables. But this time, he didn't let it explode. He compressed it. He turned the fire into ice. He didn't want to make a mess. He wanted to make an execution. He showered, shaved, and put on his sharpest black suit. He picked up the Callaway emerald ring from the safe where he had hidden it. He dialed Arthur Pendleton, the family's oldest, most feared litigation attorney, a man who hated Victor Callaway but loved the law. "Arthur," Leo said, his voice cold and steady. "Meet me at the precinct. We're getting her out. And then, we're going to burn the kingdom down." The boardroom of Callaway Logistics was a cavern of glass and mahogany on the 80th floor. Victor Callaway sat at the head of the table, flanked by Sloane Kensington. The 12 board members sat in terrified silence as Victor outlined the new direction of the company. "The rogue elements have been removed," Victor said smoothly, signing a document. "Leo is taking a sabbatical. The European merger will proceed under Sloane's guidance." Sloane smiled, a predator licking cream from her lips. "Thank you, Victor. I look forward to—" The double doors of the boardroom didn't just open, they were kicked open. Leo Callaway strode in. He wasn't alone. Behind him walked Arthur Pendleton, carrying a briefcase, and Gunner, looking ready to break someone in half. And beside Leo, wearing a simple white dress she had been given upon her release, walked Mary Bennett. She looked tired. Her wrists were bruised from the cuffs, but her head was high. "Leo," Victor sighed, putting down his pen. "This is a private meeting, and you brought the criminal?" "Really?" "She's not a criminal, Father," Leo said, walking to the other end of the long table. "She's the majority shareholder." A murmur ran through the board members. "Excuse me?" Sloane laughed nervously. Leo nodded to Arthur. The lawyer slammed a stack of papers onto the table. "As of this morning," Arthur announced, his voice booming, "Leo Callaway has filed criminal charges against Sloane Kensington and her security detail for digital trespassing, wire fraud, and fabrication of evidence. We have the server room footage. We have the IP spoofing logs. The NYPD is currently raiding Ms. Kensington's office." Sloane's face went white. She stood up. "This is ridiculous. Victor, tell him." "Sit down, Sloane," Victor snapped. He looked at Leo with a new expression. Fear. "Even if that's true, Leo, you are still unstable. The morality clause in the trust is irrelevant." Leo cut him off. "Because I'm not using the trust to oust you. I'm using the bylaws of incorporation. Article 5, Section 2. If the acting CEO is found to be complicit in federal crimes against the company, they are immediately removed." "I committed no crime," Victor roared, slamming his fist on the table. "Didn't you?" Mary spoke up. Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the room. She stepped forward. You knew Sloane broke into the server room. You authorized the security bypass. Gunner found the authorization signature. It's yours, Victor. She threw a printed screenshot onto the table. It showed Victor's digital signature authorizing the maintenance visit at 3 a.m. The room went dead silent. The board members looked from Victor to the document. This was it. The smoking gun. You tried to frame me, Mary said, her eyes locking with the old man's. You tried to send me to prison for 10 years, not because I stole money, but because I made your son strong. You don't want a strong son, Victor. You want a puppet. Victor slumped back in his chair. He looked suddenly old. The power evaporated from him like steam. Motion to remove Victor Calloway as CEO, Leo said quietly. Seconded, said the board chairman immediately. All in favor? Every hand went up, even Sloane's in a desperate attempt to save herself. You're done, Leo said to his father. Security will escort you out. As Victor was led away, shouting obscenities, and Sloane was met at the door by detectives, the room emptied. The board members fled, sensing the tectonic shift. Leo and Mary were left alone in the wreckage of the old regime. Leo turned to her. He looked at the bruises on her wrists. He reached out, his hands trembling, but he stopped inches from touching her. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know that's not enough. I let them take you. I doubted you. I broke the one promise I made. Mary looked at him. She saw the boy who had destroyed a restaurant because he was in pain. Now, she saw a man who had destroyed an empire to save her. You didn't break the promise, Mary said. You fixed it. You came for me. I don't want the company, Leo said. I don't want the money. I just want to know if the contract is still void, or if we can negotiate new terms. Mary smiled. A real, tired, beautiful smile. I'm expensive, Leo. My rates have gone up. Name your price, Leo said seriously. I want a partnership, Mary said. 50-50, in life. No more secrets, no more playing roles. And I want you to replace the tips I lost while I was in jail. Leo laughed, a sound of pure relief. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the Calloway emerald ring. I can do better than tips, he said. He dropped to one knee. There were no cameras this time, no society pages, no audience, just a man and a woman in a glass tower. Mary Bennett, Leo said, will you make me a better man? Will you marry me? For real this time? Mary took the ring. She slid it onto her finger. It felt heavy, but it didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like an anchor. Yes, she whispered. But you're still carrying the laundry. 5 years later, L'Éclat, the restaurant where it all began, reopened. It was no longer a stuffy sanctuary for the elite. It was a community kitchen and a training center for at-risk youth, funded entirely by the Calloway Foundation. Leo Calloway, the CEO of Calloway Logistics, now the leader in sustainable shipping, stood in the kitchen, chopping carrots. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He was wearing an apron. Mary Calloway walked in, holding a toddler on her hip, a little boy with Leo's storm-grey eyes and Mary's determined chin. How's the soup? She asked, kissing her husband on the cheek. Leo tasted it. Perfect, not cold. He looked around the bustling kitchen, full of laughter and noise, so different from the lonely silence of his childhood. He looked at his wife, the waitress who had saved his life with a glass of water and a kind word. He realized he was the richest man in the world, not because of the billions in the bank, but because he finally knew what it meant to serve someone else. And that is how a waitress with a linen napkin defeated a billionaire tyrant and saved a lost soul. It proves that true power isn't about how many tables you can flip or how much money you have in the bank. It's about the courage to be kind when everyone else is afraid. Leo thought he was alone in the dark, but Mary showed him that even the broken pieces can be put back together to make something beautiful. If this story touched your heart, or if you believe in the power of second chances, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that kindness is a superpower. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.